We are back. So turns out there was an issue, it seems, with the inclusion of the Celtic Ogham script characters in the slides that caused the presentation to black out. And apparently the slides that do not longer have Ogham characters but used to, they will still black out. This is not... in any case, I would like to welcome Pope onto the stage, who will be talking about emergent word stress in Littoral Tokétok. Welcome.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. So for those of you who remember from yesterday, the little people in my phone call me Pope. I also use the online handle Impish Doulahan. Today I will be discussing a constraint-based analysis of emergent word stress in my primary conlang, Littoral Tokétok. Not that you can see how that's written. So I will quickly give a crash course on optimality theory. This is the theoretical framework that my analysis is couched in. Yeah, it's there. Okay. I'll quickly go over the conlang itself and why it's interesting. I won't get too much into the details of it. I'll quickly, briefly detail my methodology, where I got my data that I'm actually analyzing. Then I'll step through the actual analysis. That's the real bulk of the presentation. There's some slides at the end, with mostly just tables for the final analysis. I'll quickly skip over them, but for those of you at home or who want to look for the VOD later, you can pause them at your own leisure. And then if we have time, I'll get into some discussion on implications that this analysis has on natural language and possible predictive power. So, what is optimality theory? OT is a model of phonology. It works a little bit like a black box, and the study of the theory is just figuring out the three component parts of it, which is to say the constraint hierarchy, the generation of candidates, and the evaluation of candidates. So you put an input into the box, these three things work together, and they give you an output of how the language likes to pronounce the input word. So just as a quick example, consider these three constraints: star coda, dep.io, max.io. You don't need to know why they're called that, that's just what they're called in the literature. In short, it's language doesn't like to have codas, language doesn't like to add segments, language doesn't like to remove segments. And then language A, B, and C here, order them differently. So language A has max.io at the bottom, so it is going to allow deletion of segments before it allows for the other things. Language B would rather apenthesize segments, and language C would rather have codas. So consider the candidate, or the input BAT candidates are based on whether it has a coda, a delete segment, or an added segment. And we can see that for language A here, because max.io is the lowest ranked, we get the output ba. Language B with dep.io is the lowest, we get bata as the lowest, or as the ideal candidate. Notice how all of the constraints are violated. It's just the one that's least ranked, or the lowest ranked one, that actually gets output. And then language C is the most agreeable with coda, so it puts out the original bat. So the conlang itself, Littoral Tokétok, why is it interesting? It is my premier conlang, it's my primary conlang. It's now over 12 years old, and the first half of those 12 years predated any formal linguistic training that I have. It was all mostly garnered from Wikipedia. And it was developed mostly on what I call vibes. And mostly a priori, with a little bit of English, Dutch, and Irish in there, mostly by happenstance. But due to the fact that it's 12 years old, and it's mostly just me messing around without any aim or goal, it has a lot of emergent features that I didn't actually intentionally put in there. They just arose when I read out sentences and words, etc. Relevant to this analysis is what I think is stiv. I'm sure all of the Danes can correct me if it's not. And the natural emergence of nasal vowels. There's a lot of portmanteau morphology, and the stress system is idiosyncratic. As I mentioned before, there's a little bit of Dutch and Irish in there. Originally, I mostly just wanted to make it sure it wasn't English. But as relevant to the stress, none of these languages have any bearing on the stress itself, so far as I can tell. So there's no categorical root initial stress like in Dutch and some Irish dialects. There's no stress shift mediated in English, like with word class conversion or extrametricality. And there's no underlying long vowels, although there are surface long vowels that would potentially attract stress. And why I choose to analyze it is because I believe it represents a robust linguistic system that is unique from any existing NatLang. So if I analyze it, maybe it'll say something about the subconscious language function in my brain that we can't get access to by looking at normal NatLangs. The data and the methodology, when it comes back up. I have about 1,700 recorded entries in its lexicon and about 65 idiomatic expressions I've collected over the years. And it is these 65 idiomatic expressions I used as the data for my research. I treat them as examples of naturalistic speech data rather than constructing and contriving specific sentences to use. And this places all of the words that I'm actually analyzing in buried in a sentence rather than saying them in isolation. Yeah, and there's a range of word types and morphological constructions because all of the idioms represent the whole 12 years of development. So I recorded myself reading each idiom aloud in as neutral of tone as I could manage, and I extracted each polysyllabic word size token. I'm assuming that monosyllables are governed by phrasal prosody, and I'm not interested in that right now. I transcribed each word using Prot, which is a phonetic analysis software, and I coded each for the morphological structure of the word, the number of syllables, stress placement, and where stress is bound, among a few other things. In total, I found 117 unique tokens that I capture in this analysis. I'll begin with some constraints that I adopted from the literature. Firstly, over 2/3 of the tokens can abide by just rhythmic stress of left to right trochees. These are the 5 constraints necessary to do that. I don't think the specifics of how they work are super important to the layfolk. You just have to know that Tokétok likes to put, really likes to have binary feet, and it will parse them if they can, unless it creates a ternary or a unary foot. And if there's any foot, any syllable left unfooted, it's all the way at the right edge. Now we get into some of the more interesting things with the remaining third of the tokens. So firstly, there seems to be a general nasal to stress principle. Nasal vowels are always stressed. I initially considered just proposing an NSP constraint. This is similar to WSP, if anyone is familiar, which just says if heavy, then it's stressed. NSP would be if nasal and it's stressed. But this is unattested so far as I could find. And I think a more well-attested solution is possible, which is to say that nasality is weight. All of the nasal vowels, when they either surface word finally with this stuv-like thing that I'm still not super confident on, or it has a geminate consonant after, or it's a long vowel. It's never anything that is clearly monomoraic. And if we assume this, then we can adopt peak prominence, which says that the most stress syllable, which is to say the primary stress, always falls on a nasal vowel if possible. And we have to rank this constraint above all the other ones to make sure that the nasal vowel is always stressed, even when all of the other constraints would be violated. Next, there is root sensitivity. For this, I adopt align root left, which it works similar to all foot left. It just wants to make sure that there's a foot that the right edge of which aligns with the right edge of the root itself, ignoring any prefixes. So with the word examples here, Malik, you would try and have a foot on just lik because that's the root, Keliwuk on just liwuk, etc. This specifically has to rank below foot binarity because we don't get Malik, we still get Malik. So foot binarity is stronger than align right left, but align root left still leaves syllables unfooted, so it is stronger than parse syllable. Next, schwa is weak, so there are some words that look like they should have stress on the root, but they don't, like in kemataka. And this only occurs when what would be stressed as a schwa. However, notably, it is still weaker than foot binarity, as demonstrated by schwa. For this, I adopt star prominent schwa. I already explained why it's weaker than foot binarity, but stronger than align root left. Next are the proposed constraints, which is to say constraints that I either have adapted from the literature or I am presenting novelly here. First is root prominence. This ensures that the head stress binds to the root when possible. Sorry, I need to read my own slide a little bit. So yeah, star prominent schwa achieves the correct distribution of stress, but the head constraint on where to place the primary stress syllable when there's no nasal vowels is a little bit too strong, because in the prot, kemataka actually has a higher peak on the second foot, but with the align head left constraint right now, we would get kemataka with initial head stress. So I propose root prominence, where if there is ambiguity between where to put the head stress, put it on the root, if nothing else is the deciding factor. And this basically just takes over the position of align head left. This is just some more, another example of how that works with a different sized root. Next is the portmanteau dilemma, because as I mentioned at the top, there is a lot of portmanteau morphology. So this looks like just two roots together, cerpeta. It's actually cerpe and peta. And the head stress categorically always falls on the second root in situations like this. I remedy this with a star root constraint, which is to say that all feet should never have elements of more than one root in them. So in this case, cerpeta, where we have the cer and the pe in the same root, is selected against, and we get cerpeta. This accounts for all of the word tokens that I collected, except for 4. Some of these I can account with some modifications to constraints. Others are matters of representation. These 4 remaining tokens are silate, kuram, makemosat, and tote. Firstly, silate, whilst in the actual lexicon does not look like a portmanteau morphology situation, it is the contrast to a different word, siras, and they're like, I won't get into the details, but there's reason to consider that they're related to each other, in which case we can consider the sif is an element from siras, so we get siras late, and then the star root takes over. So this is just a matter of changing the input representation. Next is the syncope to get kuram, because there are examples of kelis and tolis, where we get a stop, a vowel, and a liquid collapsing into just stop liquid. So for klis tlis, these are very common functional words. Kuram means to run, and is presumably just a very common verb, and can see the similar sort of irregularity arise. Finally, there is some redefinition of the align root left constraint. In the paper where I found it, it basically works like an all foot left. It just wants to shove all of the feet to the edge of the root, and is categorically unidirectional. Here I redefine it to be bidirectional, where it works outwards from the root edge. So with the old align root left constraint, we get makemosat as the preferred reading. Note that sat is a monosyllabic root on the end with 3 prefixes, but the actual output we're looking for is makemosat. If we take the new align right, where we want just either edge of a foot to align with the right or the left edge of the root, then we can get makemosat. Finally, pronouns are special. They're common function words, and whilst tote categorically has final stress, there are a few other conjugated pronominal forms that have a variability between initial and final stress, whether it's foot binarity takes over and we get initial stress, or we get the root of the pronoun itself being stressed. I don't have a slide for this, but to handle that, we can just assume that for pronouns specifically, which is not that weird, there's optionality between foot binarity and the align root constraint. So this is the final constraint hierarchy. I assume that foot trochees and peak prominence are undominated. Everything else is dominated as I described in the slides earlier. And notice that parse syllable and all foot left, which I initially used to achieve even rhythmic stress, are no longer required. This is a consequence of just how small most of the words in the language are. If we had some 6, 7, 8 syllable words, maybe we would need them again to enforce the rhythmic stress. These are just some more slides that folks at home can pause if they would like to take a closer look. There's 11 in total, just to show off all of the different word shapes that I can. Finally, some discussion on why this is interesting. Firstly, nasality as weight is not actually fully unattested. NSP is, as far as I can tell, but Karo, a Tupi language, categorically attaches stress to nasality in its stress window, which is the last 2 syllables of the word. Tokétok just has the stress window as the entire word. Bidirectional strong root edges are well attested, which is to say that stress might attach to one, or head stress attaches to one edge, and then we get rhythmic stress propagating from the other edge. With my modified bidirectional align root left, I'm simply flipping that so that the bidirectionality extends from the middle of the word form rather than the edge. Edges, plural. Root prominence is an entirely novel constraint that I propose here and is supported by only very few words in my data. For it to be well-founded topologically, a NatLang would have to attach primary stress to any root or stem as a repair strategy for when other rules or constraints would attach stress to an affix or bound element. Accordingly, I would predict, should a NatLang do this, there will be optionality in which root in a compound bears primary stress. This would be related to the portmanteau morphology that I mentioned earlier. Strong root is similarly novelly presented here and supported by very limited literal Tokétok data. It's possibly unnecessary because I get the sense that it's possible that there are other ways to solve the same problem with a single constraint. But if it works here, then for it to be cross-linguistically meaningful, I predict that a natural language will categorically feed multiple roots separately despite highly ranked anti-clash constraints, or that a NatLang has vowel insertion operation only between roots and not other elements to avoid the stress clash of trying to keep feet from being footed together. This is my thank you slide. It says "Mafton pre toute ehe," which means thanks for your attention. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's take some questions. I think there's one down here.
Yeah, so with regard to what you're saying about nasality being weighted, this is not very widely known at all, but the language that I worked on in Papua New Guinea has vowel deletion in certain contexts, and notably nasal vowels never do this, even if they would. So there is some kind of evidence there that from another natural language that they carry greater weight. And there's also something going on with stress when it comes to nasality. It gets pulled toward nasal vowels. So there's more than one language that actually backs this up, even though this one is not very available information. Yep.
Can I ask
I guess
what
that's
language?
not really a, oh yeah, it's Kala, K-A-L-A, Papua New Guinea.
Noted.
Austronesian.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not really a question, I guess.
No, it supports when I turn this into an article, so I'll take it.
Hey, thank you for the talk. It was really interesting. I was wondering, I have two questions. Why OM? Are there Goidelic influences in Tokétok or?
A couple of years ago, I developed an OMization for it. I've always wanted a script for it, and all of the ones I tried to make on my own never worked out. And I liked the tree magic for other reasons, so I just blended the two.
Fair enough.
So.
Um,
If you read OM and you do see the slides later, please ignore that the letters don't line up.
That's all right. I was also wondering, you talked a little bit about your portmanteau morphology. Are root elements in portmanteaus derived by stress? And if it's not, how does the peak prominence constraint interact with that?
I didn't understand the first half.
If root elements in portmanteaus are derived from stress in the original word, how does the peak prominence constraint interact with that if it ignores other constraints?
I'm not sure that I have the data to answer that question.
No worries. Thank you anyway.
Yeah. All of the portmanteau stuff, I think, is mostly it takes a single syllable element from one word and then attaches it to the remainder of another word. Or to the full thing. Although sometimes you get one and one. But this is mostly a product of just it having relatively short words, except when you get a really long chain of prefixes. Any other questions? I don't see any hands. Oh, there's one.
Are you aware if pre-nasalization of consonants can lead to stress in the syllable before?
I am familiar with gemination affecting stress placement, mostly because the first half of the geminate is heavy on the previous syllable, and that makes it stressed. There are possible. That was a consideration when I was putting together this analysis. That was unnecessary, so far as I can tell, because the only real word where that was in contention was for silata specifically, but the input representation handles that. It's possible with more data, if I had 1,000 words instead of 100 and change, that would be a consideration in other words that are not accounted for yet. But that is something attested in other languages.
All right, as it looks like there are no more questions. Let's give Pope another round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I should add that if you feel unsure of what stød is, how it is realized, you are in good company because no Danish scholars can agree either.